The wind over the plains of Uhud carried an uneasy silence. It was the kind of silence that comes just before something unforgettable happens. The believers stood ready, heart steady, their eyes fixed on the enemy that had once trembled before them at Badr. Across the field, the Quraysh gathered in anger and vengeance. What began as a crisp, clear morning would soon become a storm of dust, steel, and fear. But among the clashing swords and galloping horses, something else would take place. Something unseen but piercing. A single scream would echo across the battlefield. It wouldn't come from a warrior or a leader. It would come from Satan himself, and it would shake the army of believers like an earthquake. Before we begin, make sure to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss more powerful stories drawn from the Quran, authentic narrations, and classical history. And tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? We love seeing believers from every corner of the globe join this journey. The Quran would later describe this moment with precision. And Allah certainly fulfilled His promise to you when you were killing them by His permission, until you lost courage and fell to disputing about the order and disobeyed after He had shown you that which you loved. Surah Aal Imran, verse 152. This is not just a story of swords and strategies. It's a story of whispers, panic, and how one cry turned near victory into confusion. The sun rose over Mount Uhud, spreading golden light across the rocky slopes. The believers had gathered in the early morning, their spirits high after the victory of Badr, just a year before. That victory had stunned the Quraysh, broken their pride, and left scars that still burned in their hearts. Now they were here to avenge their losses, and they came prepared. The messenger of Allah carefully arranged his companions. His strategy was brilliant. Behind the army stood a small elevated mound, later called the Archer's Hill. 50 skilled archers under the command of Abdullah ibn Jubair were placed there with one unshakable order: protect our backs. Do not leave this position, even if you see birds snatching us away. Remain here whether we are winning or losing. The archers' position wasn't glamorous, but it was critical. Their arrows would prevent the enemy cavalry from circling behind the Muslim lines. If that position held, the army would remain protected. If it broke, disaster could follow. The Quraysh, 3,000 strong, stood opposite. Their ranks included seasoned warriors, vengeful relatives of those killed at Badr, and cavalry led by Khalid ibn al-Walid, not yet a Muslim, known for his sharp battlefield tactics. The air was thick with tension as the two forces stared each other down. When the battle began, the Muslims surged forward with faith and discipline. The Quraysh lines wavered under the first wave. Arrows from the Archer's Hill rained down on the cavalry, holding them at bay. Step by step, the Quraysh began to retreat. Their banners fell. The Muslims advanced. Victory seemed so close it could almost be tasted. Cries of triumph rose. Spoils of war began to scatter on the ground as the Quraysh turned and ran. Many among the Muslims thought the battle was over. That was when the real test began. On the Archer's Hill, some of the archers saw the Quraysh fleeing and the Muslims gathering the spoils. They said to one another, "The battle is won. Why should we stay behind while others collect the reward?" Their commander reminded them of the Prophet's words, but the pull was strong. One by one, except for a handful, the archers abandoned their posts and descended the hill. Down below, Khalid ibn al-Walid watched like a hawk. He saw the gap open. He led his cavalry in a wide, swift arc around the hill and struck the exposed rear of the Muslim army. The attack was sudden and devastating. What had moments earlier been a clear victory turned to confusion in an instant. The sound of galloping horses and clashing swords erupted from behind. The believers were struck from both sides. Quraysh forces in front, cavalry from behind. Dust filled the air. Lines broke. Fighters turned, shocked to find the enemy where their brothers had once stood. And in the middle of this chaos it happened. A figure among the enemy took on the form of a man and let out a scream that cut through the battlefield. "Muhammad has been killed!" It was a lie. The prophet was alive. But the scream echoed across the valley, bouncing off the rocks of Uhud. Men who had been fighting with courage froze. Some dropped their weapons. Others fell to the ground in despair. A few fled toward Medina, thinking the cause was lost. That scream wasn't just a sound. It was psychological warfare. It was perfectly timed. It came at the height of confusion, when hearts were vulnerable. Satan had found his opening. All around, companions were scrambling. Some searched frantically for the prophet, their hearts tight with fear. Others tried to hold their ground as confusion spread. For a moment, the unity that had carried them forward began to splinter. Fear mixed with dust. Voices overlapped with cries of pain. The battle shifted not just in strategy, but in spirit. Satan's scream became a spark that turned order into panic. It was heard across the battlefield, reaching ears and hearts faster than any sword could. This was not just about swords anymore. This was about morale, unity, and the power of a lie whispered at the right moment. The scream tore through the battlefield like lightning splitting the sky. "Muhammad has been killed!" echoed from the rocks of Uhud, rolling over the chaos like a wave. For a moment, time itself seemed to hold its breath. Dust filled the air. Swords clashed in the distance. But everywhere the word spread, hearts trembled. Men who had been pushing forward now froze. Others stumbled backward, their eyes wide with shock. Some companions fell to the ground, their strength vanishing as if the earth had opened beneath them. A few began to retreat toward Medina, their minds unable to comprehend how the prophet could be gone. It was a moment of collective disbelief. This was the genius and cruelty of the scream. It didn't come from the Quraysh commanders, nor from a known warrior. It came from Satan, disguised among the ranks. It was timed with surgical precision. Just as the Muslims were struck from behind, just as confusion began to spread, it was a blow not to bodies but to hearts. Sahih al-Bukhari records this event clearly. During the Battle of Uhud, Satan shouted among the people, "Muhammad has been killed!" The narration says that this cry reached the Muslims and caused many to retreat or drop their weapons, thinking the messenger had indeed fallen. It wasn't just a rumor. It was psychological warfare in its purest form. Imagine being on that battlefield. You're surrounded by dust, hearing cries from every direction. You see fellow soldiers running. You hear someone scream that the prophet is gone. You can't see clearly through the chaos. Fear grips you. Your sword suddenly feels heavier. Your heart sinks. This is exactly what Satan wanted. Some companions felt the weight of despair so intensely that they sat down on the battlefield. Others thought of surrendering. A few even thought, if the messenger of Allah has been killed, what is left to fight for? That is how devastating the scream was. But not everyone faltered. In the middle of the confusion, some companions' hearts ignited with resolve. Anas ibn al-Nadir, a noble companion who had missed the Battle of Badr and promised himself that he would prove his sincerity, heard the cry and said, "If Muhammad has been killed, then what will you do with life after him? Fight for what he fought for. Die upon what he died upon." He rushed forward into the thick of the battle, fighting fiercely until he was martyred. His body would later be found with over 80 wounds. His words became a rallying cry for others who refused to let the scream define them. Meanwhile, others searched frantically for the prophet. Confusion spread through both friend and foe. Some among the Quraysh heard the scream too and hesitated, unsure if it was true. The battlefield became a storm of misinformation, a perfect example of how one well-timed lie can shift the momentum of war. The prophet himself was alive, though injured. During the chaos, he had been struck, his helmet driven into his cheek, and blood flowed down his blessed face. Surrounded by a few loyal companions, he called out to rally the believers. His voice, though weakened by injury, cut through the panic. "Come to me,
Servants of Allah."
Those who heard recognized the voice they thought they had lost. It pierced through the fog of fear like sunlight breaking through clouds. Companions began to gather around him, shielding him with their bodies, forming a defensive circle as the Quraysh forces pressed in. The Quran describes this moment vividly. When you were climbing up and paid no heed to anyone, while the messenger was calling you from behind. Al Imran 153. Many fled toward the mountain, climbing in panic, not realizing their leader was still alive behind them. It was a moment where faith, fear, loyalty, and confusion collided all at once. Classical scholars like Ibn Kathir and Ibn Hisham explained that Shaytan's cry had two objectives. First, to break the Muslims' morale by making them believe their leader was gone, and second, to fracture their unity by causing groups to act in isolation. Some climbed the mountain, others fought on, others searched, and some fled. What had been one strong line became scattered groups. This was Satan's aim all along, not to fight with a sword, but to make believers fight confusion within themselves. The Prophet, surrounded by a few companions including Abu Bakr, Umar, Ali, Talha, and others, continued to call out. Slowly, word began to spread that he was alive. The scream began to lose its power. Those who had fled heard whispers among themselves.
"He is alive! The messenger is alive!"
Their retreat slowed. Some turned back. Hearts that had cracked began to mend, but the damage had been done. The sudden loss of discipline and the panic caused by that scream gave the Quraysh a moment they would not have had otherwise. The Muslims suffered heavy casualties. Many companions were martyred. Among them was Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib, the Lion of Allah, whose death struck a deep chord in the hearts of the believers. The scene at Uhud stands as one of the most intense examples of how Satan can use a single moment, a scream, a lie, to cause chaos among believers. It wasn't the strength of the Quraysh army alone that turned the tide. It was fear, confusion, and the power of a whisper amplified in the right place at the right time. Yet even in this darkness, there were flickers of immense courage. Companions like Anas ibn al-Nadir, who refused to let fear take root. Companions who ran toward the Prophet instead of away, and the Prophet himself standing wounded. But unwavering, the battlefield was in disarray. The dust of confusion hung over Uhud like a thick fog. But slowly through the chaos, something began to change. The scream that had echoed through the valley was losing its grip. Word spread through small clusters of companions. The messenger is alive. He's alive! Those who had been climbing the mountain turned back. Those who had frozen where they stood lifted their heads. And those who had been searching with desperation began to run toward the sound of his voice. The Prophet, wounded and surrounded by a small corps of loyal companions, continued to call,
"Come to me, servants of Allah."
His cheek was bleeding. His helmet had been driven into his face, and his front tooth was broken, but his voice carried strength. It was the anchor in the storm. Companions began to gather around him, forming a shield of flesh and faith. Talha ibn Ubaydullah placed himself directly in front of the Prophet, shielding him from incoming arrows. Abu Dujana stood over him like a wall, his back absorbing blows that were meant for the messenger. Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, the great archer, stood beside him, firing arrow after arrow with precision as the prophet encouraged him. "Shoot," said, "May my father and mother be sacrificed for you." Slowly the scattered groups reformed. The Quraysh, who had been on the edge of a complete rout just minutes earlier, now found themselves facing a regrouped corps around the very man they thought was gone. Their moment of advantage began to fade. As the prophet's survival became clear, Satan's scream lost its power. The Quran later described this moment: one you were climbing up and paid no heed to anyone, while the messenger was calling you from behind her. Al Imran 353. The verse exposed exactly what had happened. Fear had made some turn away, while the messenger stood calling them back. The revelation did not hide the believer's mistake. It recorded it, word for word, so that the Ummah would learn. Discipline in the face of whispers is as important as courage in the face of swords. Satan had fled. When he realized the prophet was alive and the cry had been exposed as false, he melted away into the chaos. Just as he had whispered at the right time, he vanished at the right time, leaving humans to deal with the aftermath. This is his pattern. He strikes, then disappears. The Quraysh regrouped as well, but their confidence was shaken. They had thought the scream meant victory. Now, facing a determined group of believers around their prophet, their lines faltered. The battle continued brutal and costly, but that scream would forever be remembered as the turning point. Among the companions, the emotions ran deep. Some wept as they returned to the prophet's side, ashamed that they had fled when they thought he was gone. Others held their ground fiercely, determined not to repeat their moment of hesitation. The prophet, despite his injuries, remained calm and firm. He did not scream at them, nor humiliate them. He guided, rallied, and reminded them of their mission. The verses revealed after Uhud captured the layers of this moment with precision. Allah said, "And Allah certainly fulfilled His promise to you when you were killing them by His permission, until you lost courage and fell to disputing about the order and disobeyed after He had shown you that which you love. Among you are some who desire this world, and some who desire the hereafter. Then He turned you away from them to test you. But He has forgiven you, and Allah is the possessor of bounty for the believers." See Al Imran 302. It was all there, the initial victory. The disobedience of the archers, the confusion, the retreat, the test, the forgiveness, and the divine wisdom behind it all. This wasn't just a military event. It was a spiritual lesson written into history. Shaytan's scream had done its damage. Dozens of companions had fallen, including some of the most beloved. Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib, the Lion of Allah, lay martyred. The battlefield was stained with blood and echoing with cries. But what Shaytan failed to achieve was total collapse. The prophet's presence, his voice, and the faith of the companions who rallied prevented the chaos from consuming everything. Some companions who had retreated initially came back into the fight with renewed courage. The Quraysh, though gaining ground, could not destroy the Muslim army completely. Eventually, the Prophet ordered the believers to withdraw strategically toward the mountain, creating a strong defensive line that the Quraysh couldn't break. They retreated believing they had won, but they had not broken the spirit of the believers. What remained on the field after the Quraysh departed was not just the wounded and the martyrs. It was a lesson that would echo through generations. Victory can turn to trial in moments. Whispers can be more dangerous than weapons. And Satan's greatest victories come not through force, but through fear and disunity. The companions carried that lesson with them for the rest of their lives. Many would fight in future battles with the memory of that scream etched into their hearts. They would never again allow confusion to spread so easily. The Quran's revelation after Uhud became their teacher, turning their pain into wisdom. The Prophet, battered but standing, led his companions in prayer after the battle. The survivors buried their martyrs. Among the dead lay those who had rushed forward like Anas ibn al-Nadir, who refused to let despair take him when the scream was heard. His courage became a shining example of how to face whispers with unwavering faith. Satan's scream at Uhud was a moment of chaos, but it also became a moment of clarity. It showed how quickly fear can spread, how easily a lie can turn the tide, and how powerful steadfastness can be in breaking that tide. And as history moved forward, that scream remained frozen in the memory of the Ummah, not as a sign of defeat, but as a reminder whispers can shake even the bravest, but the truth always outlives them.